Namaste. Welcome to our 87th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We're ready now for the 36th verse of the 18th and final chapter of the book. Now, hear from me of the threefold happiness that one enjoys through practice and by which one attains the end of pain. The word is sukha for happiness, not ananda. Ananda is the higher experience that is of the self. Ananda is the nature of the self. Sukha is in the mind. And the Gita is a very practical book, and it's talking about the psychology that the yogi needs to cultivate. So, you enjoy this sukha what? Through abhyasa, practice. Now, practice doesn't mean you practice being happy. And you go around and smile when you don't feel happy, and you go around smiling when you don't feel cheerful, and you're always upbeat, and you're always... That's just being a phony. The abhyasa is observance of the principles of dharma, of yama and niyama, which prepare us for the ultimate practice, yoga sadhana. Ultimately, even this sukha, which also means ease, at being at peace and relaxed, that only comes through real sadhana. You can get short-term sukha through many things, but sadhana is the thing. And again, as I've said, they always end, every chapter of the Gita ends with these very words. Thus, in the Upanishads of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, the science of the eternal, the scripture of yoga. You should never lose sight of that perspective. It is a book. It's the teachings of a yogi, the supreme yogi Krishna, to the great adept yogi Arjuna, to all yogis who will read this book, and hopefully with comprehension. Okay. So there's a threefold sukha by which one attains to the end of pain. Lack of sukha, lack of happiness. It isn't just suffering, it is anxiety, worries, feeling of insecurity, anything that interrupts the sukha. That happiness, which is like poison at first, but like amrita in the end. Just stop there. Poison kills you, makes you either very sick or ultimately kills you. Amrita means undying. And the amrita came forth at the beginning of the universe. It is said that the gods churned the universe. Think of it as milk, a liquid, but when you churn it, you get solid. You get the milk curd, the cheese. This, of course, is a symbol of our private universe and our faculties, our inner powers churn, again, through yoga sadhana. And out came, this is important for yogis to remember, when they did the churning of the so-called ocean of milk, two things came out simultaneously. Hala hala, which was poison so deadly that to see it killed you. much less ingesting. And of course, if you did it, it'd really kill you too. But the fumes of it literally killed. That's how supremely deadly it was. And then came the Amrita, which is not just undeath, but beyond death, life which is irrevocable, absolutely permanent. And both of these will come out because you've got to get rid of impurities before you can be pure. So to reach purity, there has to be a cleansing. When you eat something poisonous, you vomit it up. So it's the way it has to be. Therefore, understand this also, yogi friends. You will have to face the negativity of your mind. Now, it doesn't mean that a big monster will rise up and it may drag you away from the yogic path and you'll be degraded and you'll go on, you go to hell. No. But it means you will be aware of what is poison in your mind so that you can both resist it and eliminate it. And yes, I've known of people who said, well, I was nice till I started to meditate. And then, well, most of the time they weren't nice, they didn't realize it. And the eye-opening practice, the consciousness expanding practice of yoga enabled them to see how they weren't good at all. They weren't just fine at all. This is important. So understand that's going to come. People like to say, oh, I meditated, just felt bliss. A lot of phony yoga will do that for you because it just messes with your nervous system and gives a fake euphoria just as various drugs do. But real yoga brings it up. And it says in the Bible, behold, I set before you two paths. So the poison comes up and the immortality giving comes up and you decide which you'll have. Your free will is always there. Saint so-and-so was wrapped in ecstasy and so on. God doesn't do that to you. God doesn't net you like you're a butterfly. You choose, you move, you go. And it's all by your power. You came from God, but who are you but a part of God? So, that happiness is which, like poison at first, but like Amrita in the end, means that ease that at first it isn't an ease. You realize the dilemma you have. You realize the difficult position you're in, and you realize the peril you are in at all times in this hideous world. Because, oh yes, it's God's world, and it's got a lot of pretty scenery, but the effect on the human being is usually quite hideous. One thing, it kills you. We don't get out here alive, not one person. Jesus didn't get out alive, he died first. So, that will seem like poison to those who are centered in, aware of, and loving and fostering their ignorance, their negativity, their lower self, which is an unself. And so, like, oh, I felt I was dying. There are some people that say that. I used to meditate, but then suddenly I felt like I was dying of it. It was horrible. This awful thing came over me. I quit. That stuff's bad. It's of the devil. No, they're of the devil. And yoga made them see the inner devil, and they didn't want to recognize it as for themselves. So they said, oh, the boogeyman was going to get me. Well, it's their choice. We have no argument with it. But this is so. Or at first you sit to meditate and you think, oh, bored, just normal. Some people, when they sit to meditate, they begin to perspire and they get physically hot. Now, spiritual discipline is called tapasya, means generation of heat. But as a rule, it means that symbolically, like it's the inner fire which burns up ignorance. But it happened to me. I mean, I had to take my clothes off. I'd sit on my bed and soak my bed. I would sweat so hard. Now, this only happened a week or two, but it was just incredible. And I remember I asked one of Yoganandaji's disciples of this, and he said, yes, this does happen because although we think of it as symbolic, you also are literally burning up negative elements in you and negative elements in the body. So you'll think Swami Trigunatitananda, Sri Ramakrishna's disciple, when he was in San Francisco at the ashram there, which he established, I mentioned it before, he made a sign which he put on the wall that said, do or die, but you won't die. So there are people even that say, I had the feeling I was dying. Well, that's their own negativity manifesting. You hang on and you come to life, or find out you've always been alive. Okay, it's a long time on that, but it's very important to realize. It isn't oh, you learn the meditation, you just feel like a little angel from the very first step. I practice that kind of stuff, and it really messes you up. Okay. Amrita, born of the light of one's own self. In other words, you're starting to see and experience your true self, which its nature is bliss and its nature is inviolable life. It's a wonderful thing to be experiencing and going after, and yoga sadhana just opens it up to you like a book. That happiness, that sukha, is sattvic, right? Of the sattva guna, the guna of light, the quality of light and of growth evolution. Now, that happiness arising from the contact of the senses with their objects, which in the beginning is like in rent, aren't we having fun? Oh, it feels great. Okay? Which includes sex, of course, it's the major delusion, but changes into that which is like poison. It kills your consciousness. It kills your spiritual sensitivity. It kills your conscience. Is declared to be Rajasic. It's not just nothing. It's not just calm and dull. It's ooh, and that is Rajasic. And many people, they spend their life pursuing it, prolonging it, whatever it takes, and ultimately it destroys them even before death comes. That happiness arising from the contact of the senses with their objects, which in the beginning is like amrita, but change it into that which is like poison, is declared to be Rajasic. Now, that happiness, which in the beginning and as a result is delusive of the self from the very first moment, it's destroying or distorting our consciousness and our awareness of the self and our intelligence itself. Arising from sleep, swapna, but it also means sleepiness. You know, there are people, they're just always a kind of drag around. I remember there was a lady that lived across the street from us when I lived with my Aunt Faye. And if Aunt Faye would say, well, how are you today? She'd always say, oh, Faye, I'm so tired. And in rural Illinois and Kentucky, uh, someone that works on a farm is called the hired man or the hired woman. And so sometimes the Kentuckians say hard rather than hired. So Aunt Faye always called her the tarred woman. Well, the poor woman, when she died, and only after she was dead, they discovered she had leukemia. And all those years she was slowly dying. So it's the sleep of death. This is what it's talking about. And the sleepiness, the inclination to spiritual and intellectual death is being spoken about here. So it's sleep, indolence, laziness. Oh, do I have to do it? I mean, well, really, and so on. No, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything. It's important that people also realize that. Just plain spiritual laziness. Loving darkness, oh, don't wake me up, and so on. And this happens sometimes when people are dying. There was a very lazy, a very dull, spiritually indolent person. And he knew what was the right way to go, but he didn't. And he indulged his laziness, his spiritual, his dullness. And then one day, nobody could wake him up. We had known him in America. He'd gone to India. He was actually staying in the Anandamaya ashram in northern India, in the city of Konkan. And one day they couldn't wake him up. They shook him, they yelled, they couldn't wake him up. So, but he seemed to be perfectly okay. They couldn't find anything wrong with him. But they carried him out, put him in a car, drove him to the Ramakrishna Mission Hospital that was at the edge of Konkan. And they put him there, they put him in a bed. They tested him and so on. They couldn't find anything. They had no idea what was happening. These were very qualified doctors. So they said, well, he's got to go to Delhi. So in the ambulance and with an acquaintance of his who was a very good friend of our ashram, who was keeping watch over him, then down they went to Delhi. And they went to a hospital and they said, sorry, we just can't admit it anymore. And they went to another hospital and said, sorry, we just can't admit it anymore. One where they said, well, we can see he's so ill, we don't have the facilities to look after him. And then he was examined and they couldn't find anything wrong with him, Thought, well, let's take him off to another hospital. Let's see what they say. And suddenly at one point, his skin just turned virtually a brilliant yellow. And they realized that the undetectable problem was severely advanced jaundice of the liver. And while they were on the way to rush him to hopefully one hospital that could take him in and treat him, he died. He was a liar all his life, and his body lied. He never liked to speak the truth. There are people that they act like the truth to kill them. And I don't mean it's like embarrassing truths. There are some people that I think if you ask them, is 1 and 1 2, they wouldn't answer you or they try to evade it. I have known people like this. He was one of them. Incorrigible. So he died of his own falsehood and of his own clinging to his own inner poison. Now that's a terrible thought, isn't it? This is a person to whom poison, hala hala, was his amrita. And therefore, He loved it. And he was always sleeping. If there was a spiritual discourse going on, he'd be there going. Guarantee. 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 When did I need to be with Anandamai Ma? People who were there told me. Ma comes in, everybody bows down, Ma sits there, and he falls asleep. When Ma gets up to leave, he wakes up. So he was living theoretically with Ma, but avoiding Ma. And this was a continual situation. So finally, he died of his own truth and of his own aversion to honesty and openness. That can happen. Let's say it again. That happiness which in the beginning and as a result is delusive of the self, arising from sleep, indolence, and heedlessness, is declared to be tamasic. How much sleepiness do we have? How much laziness do we have? How much, I don't want to look at that, do we have? And this we can know. We will sleep the sleep of death. And in Dharma, we don't scare people, but sometimes it's not a bad idea to be healthily scared. So our time is up. We will go on to the very next verse, which has very interesting things to say, as I hope you will find out by visiting us again.